Hi, this is Linda, and I'm back with Talking in American English Lesson 37. This lesson is based on what I have found my students need in classes when I meet them face to face. And so I'm using this as the setting for Friends Meet Up, and I will have a conversation and some vocabulary and a little bit of grammar, and then some pronunciation at the end. So let's go to our conversation. Making plans at first. There are two conversations. First conversation. 4 coworkers are leaving work. Not here. Jane says, let's meet up on Saturday. Now the reason these two are in green is because they don't have to be there. You could say, let's meet Saturday. Or you could say, let's meet on Saturday. Or you could say, let's meet up on Saturday. Let's meet up on Saturday, said Jane. Jan says, okay, where do you want to meet? And this is in a different color because you could also say, instead of where do you want to meet, you could say, where shall we meet? Or where should we meet? All of those mean the same thing, basically. Jack says, how or what. He could say, how about the park on Fifth Avenue? Or what about the park on Fifth Avenue? One or the other. And Jake says, the one at the corner of Fifth and Brown Street? He's asking, is that the one? Now notice Jane and Jan are women's names, and Jack and Jake are men's names, and we're going to talk about pronunciation with those later. So Jack then says, that's the one. At what time? He could just say, that's the one. What time? The at is optional, but we often use that. Jane says, how about at 10 a.m.? Then we'll have lunch together afterwards if we want. Jan says, okay, that works for me. We had works for me before, remember? See you then. Jack and or Jake would say, yeah, me too. See ya. This is very casual. This is yeah, yes. Me too. See ya is like see you. See ya. See ya is pretty common. Let's look at this very short grammar lesson. When to use on and at. I'm only giving you these two. There are a few others about when you're in a car or on a plane. We're not getting into that differentiation. Just on and at. On is usually a street or a general location of some kind. At, then you give the exact location. On is when we give the day or days. It could be describing days. At would be the time, the actual time. So let's see some examples of that. We use that in the conversation. On Fifth Street. It's just the street. It's a long street. We don't know where on the street. Somewhere on the street. It's very general. On Fifth Street. Now we want to know exactly where. At the corner of Fifth, in other words, Fifth Street, and Brown Avenue, for instance. At the corner of Fifth and Brown is very specific. On Fifth Street is not specific. On Saturday, that's the day. At 10 a.m., that's the time. So when we go from more general time to more specific time, we change from on to at. On, IH, that's an abbreviation you will see a lot. It means interstate highway. Interstate highway is a highway that goes from one state to another. Inter means crossing the borders. Interstate highway. So on IH5, That's a general road at the intersection of Interstate Highway 5 and 10th, which is probably a street that crosses the highway. And where the highway and the street meet, that's an intersection. So at the intersection of IH5 and 10th. Or on Tuesday, that's the day, at noon. That's a particular time, very specific. On Little Lane, that's the name of the street. It's called Little Lane. But now I want to know more. Where on Little Lane? At 105 North Little Lane. That's very specific. On Friday, that's the day, but it's a long day, at 7 p.m. Now I know the exact time. Then on the weekend, that's more than one day, but it's still days on the weekend, and it's a long period of time. At lunchtime, maybe we're going to meet on Saturday and we're going to meet on Sunday at lunchtime. On the sidewalk, that's a long sidewalk. Maybe we're at work and there's a sidewalk outside. So that long sidewalk outside the building is where we will meet. And when? At break time. On my birthday, that's a day, at 9 in the morning. Now, 9 in the morning is a specific time. I don't have to use AM or PM. I could say in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening. But this is general and this is specific for on or at with times and locations. Now we're going to do another story. The people actually go to the park. 4 friends meet at the park. Jack, Jake, Jan, and Jane. Jan says, Jane, did you come here with Jack or Jake? Jane says, I came with Jake. Jack is coming on his motorcycle. Jan says, I see you brought your camera. Did you ride in Jake's new car? Jane says, yes, I did. It is nice. It had not rained earlier, so after parking, Jake ran gratefully. He's grateful, thankful that it didn't rain. Jake ran gratefully through the dry grass to his friends. He didn't have to run through wet grass, so he's thankful or grateful. Jake says, hi, Jan. Hi, Jane. Jan and Jane both say, hi. Then Jake says, I sold my van last week in a vain attempt to save gas. Vain means it was useless. He tried to save gas, so he sold his van and got a smaller car. This car uses a lot of gas also, though. It's because of its weight. It's a heavy car, even though it's not as big. Should we wait for Jack? Is he late? Oh, I see Jack getting off his motorcycle now. Jack says, hi, everyone. Jan says, hi, Jack. I like your bike. Jack says, thanks. I barely tapped against that concrete barrier last time I came and scraped the bumper a little. I put tape over the scratch for now. Jane says, I'm so sorry. It doesn't show, though. Jack says, we sat under those trees at that picnic table and ate last time. Jan says, let's do that again, but I don't want to eat too much. I gained 8 pounds recently. Jake says, Last time, Jack, you were here walking with a cane. Jack says, yes, I panicked last time because of the pain and used a cane, but I can walk fine now. Jane says, it's plain that our plan to meet today was a good idea. The weather is perfect. And Jan says, then let's eat at the table where we ate last time. Jane, Jake, and Jack say, okay, we're starving. The reason we have some of the words in blue and some of the words in this red purple color is because these have the a sound and these have the a sound. I'm going to teach you a little trick to help if people don't understand you when you speak. You're trying to say Jane and they think you said Jan, or you're trying to say Jan and they think you said Jane. Now, first of all, let's look at the pronunciation of the letter A. Here is a little trick to avoid that confusing A vowel sound problem. Let's look at the name Jan, Jane. See the arrow? That's when you get to the end of the sound, go down. Jan, 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 Jan. But when you say this one, even if you start it the same way, Jane, Jane, Jan, Jane. Now this is very short, but it will help people understand you. Jen, Jane, Jack, Jack. There's almost no but a tiny Jack, Jake, 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 Jack, Cam, camera, Cam. There's a little bit of an not camera, but camera, came, not came, but came, camera, came, at, eight. And another place in the story we have the number eight, 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 at, ran, rain. And this is a king's ruling over the country, his reign. It sounds like this one, rain, 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 ran. Grass, grass. Grateful or great. Sat. Now we don't want to say but it's just a little tiny sat. Save, sat. Again, against, gain. Van, vain, vain. That's another word. We're not going to talk about that one right now, but it is another word that sounds the same. Tap, tape, scratch, scrap, scrape. Panic. Now notice when I had it in the story, I put ed on it, so I had to add a k also. Panicked. But this is just panic or pain, pain, like a window piece of glass is a pane. In some parts of the South, that is very noticeable. But in other parts of the country, it's not as noticeable, but it's barely there. Pen, pen, pain. Maybe we don't have to say it louder. It's just pain, pain. It's just a little bit of it up with your sound. Okay, a few more. Can, I can go. Cane, he walks with a cane. Can, cane. Plan, plane, plane, like an airplane. Last, late. Now they start a little bit different, a and a, but some students have a hard time making those different. And this is just a little bit of some oddities about the A. You know that when there's an R after it, something different happens. If it's an A-R-E, it's air instead of air. Bear, barely. Except for the word R, which breaks all the rules. It's just R. It's not air. It's R. But it's more like star and car with no E, and that's the normal way to pronounce an A-R, car, star. And then we put R in there for some reason. Then we have care, which is like this, and stare, which is like this, and dare. It's because of the R. All of these are affected by the R. Thanks is really strange because it sounds like thanks. It should be thanks, but it's not. It breaks the rule of my pattern up there because this is thanks, thanks, thanks. Not thanks, just plain thanks. No, it's thanks, thank you, thank you. Do you hear that little E sound? Thank you, thank you, thanks. A W-A usually sounds like an ah. Water, waddle, waffle, wander, was. There are many, many, many. W-A says ah. But there are a few words that say ah, as in wag, a dog wags his tail, wagon, you pull a wagon, wax, it's very slick, wax, there's a little tiny a little tiny but wait, 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 it goes up. And let's look at the I and E sound because this also is very important for my students who want to be understood when they're speaking. First of all, I short, which is I, and long E, students are still having trouble making those sound very different. So let's practice that with these words. Also, while we're practicing, I want to mention that the double L at the end of a word after EL and IL, especially, but any of the other LL endings, it's not made with the lips. It's not will, it's will. Only the tongue makes the O, not the lips. Don't say will. It's will, will. Hill. It's a hill, not a hill. Hill. And that's very important to be understood. So let's be sure we practice that as well. Now let's practice with these sentences. Will and wheel. Will, wheel. We will leave at 9, so we'll be on time. Hill and heel. He walked up the hill and got a blister on his heel. That's the back of your foot that sometimes gets sore when your shoe rubs it. Heel. Still, steal. The thieves still want to steal your money. We thought they weren't going to try anymore, but they are. They are still trying to steal your money. Pill and peel. Take the pill, then peel a banana. Take the pill and then peel the banana. Fill and feel. She fills the coffee cup. Now it feels hot. Million and meal. This restaurant has sold 1,000,000 meals. 1,000,000 meals. Kill, keel. The hunter killed a deer. I saw it keel over. You don't hear that a lot, but it means something is standing up and then it just falls. It keels over. Keel over. And then it and eat. Did you eat all of it? Did you eat all of it? Or did and deed. Did you do the deed? Did you do the deed, make sure I, E. These two don't have the L's, but it's still practicing that same I, E, which is important in many words, not just L words. I hope that helps, and I hope you enjoy the stories and learn the sentence structure and the vocabulary and the pronunciation and a little bit of grammar about on and at. And see you next time.